This is the D6 generation.
Dice are our vice.
Creating not too horrible content since 2008.
Are you crazy? That's like 400 hours of gamer nonsense.
Oh, I think we're well past that.
D6G Hot Take.
Hello. So, hot take. It's a tough one because what I want to talk about is cold. It is very, very, very cold. My main thought is why am I painting 1,200 15 millimeter Confederate soldiers right now, because I am not enjoying it at all. And so my hobby time, which is extremely limited already, is proving very, very, very unproductive. And this has a ripple effect, and this has been a long time coming, to be honest. This conversation with me and with you has been a long time coming because it's impacted a lot of other things. There's been a really interesting ripple effect or domino effect onto a lot of my other gaming, a lot of the things that sort of like happen around my hobbying. My hobbying is really essential, I have learned over the years, to my mental health. So that's taken a hit. And so what is going on is what really I've been trying to puzzle through. And, first of all, it's very daunting. So how did I end up with actually, when all is said and done, almost 3,000 15 millimeter miniatures to paint? Russ and I are both on record as not being big fans of historical war games. So what went on? Well, I've already gone over this a lot. I've talked about it. My Gettysburg trip this July is coming up, of course, and I'll drop in a little recommendation again here. We are still working on the specifics. The way these trips work now with Geek Nation Tours is the people who sign up for them are not obligated to go on the trip. You don't have to spend any money. There's no upfront money required. You sign up for the tour starter, and we basically go through several rounds of what would make this trip the best trip for you. And so we're right in the process of that right now. So that's exciting. And I've been doing a lot of research with the Civil War, because it was an area of American history that I've always been interested in, but haven't really delved into that much. So between my reading and my viewing and my deep dives into the internet, it really started spurring my imagination. I really, really started to feel that itch about these massed combat games, and Black Powder was something that was always sort of in the back of my mind. I do enjoy Warlord games, and so I thought that something I might be interested in looking into. And then I looked into it, and here's what happened. The old starter comes with 12 frames of troops for the Confederates and 12 frames of troops for the Union. And each frame comes with one cannon, one officer, and one cannon and crew. And the crew is 4 guys. One officer and 100 15 millimeter soldiers in strips of 10. And what happens is 2 strips go on 1 stand, so you've got 5 stands worth of men. And the rules are kind of fast and loose, which is a little frustrating and confusing. But your regiment can have between 1 and 5 stands, so it's got a lot. But each frame only comes with 1 command strip. But you can get, as I did, you can get 15 millimeter infantry from other companies' metal that you can then build additional command strips with. So I did that. So instead of 12, I have actually, if I painted everything up, 18 regiments, potentially. Each one would have its own command stand. So, and of course then Warlord came out with a great little supplement box that includes a unit of Zouaves, which is privately funded troops that were used by both the Union and the Confederacy, that have much fancier equipment and much fancier costume. They are costumes. Their uniforms are basically costumes to make them look like this, celebrated French unit for some reason. And it's very interesting to me. I think I've talked about this before, but it's in my research. Gaming, all these Civil War gamers talk about the Zouaves, and every army has some Zouaves, and everybody likes Zouaves, and you have Zouaves in your collection, and blah, blah, blah. Then when you do the research, literally, and I've been doing a lot of research over the last 3 months or more, Zouaves have only come up once in all of that research. And they were actually, it was 1 panel in the Ford's Theater Museum. Beneath the theater, there's a beautiful Civil War museum underneath Ford's Theater, and Zouaves were briefly mentioned on 1 panel in that museum. So that was intriguing. But anyway, so the supplement unit gives you 1 5-stand regiment of Zouaves. Then it also gives you 1 unit, 3 stands of skirmishers, and then 3 stands of dismounted cavalry, and then 3 stands or 4 stands. It might be 4 stands of mounted cavalry. And I figured out a very easy way to make the skirmishers and the dismounted cavalry kind of like do double duty. So I'm going to be mounting the dismounted, the horses for the dismounted cavalry on a separate little piece of base, so you can put it behind the guys. So that's going to be interesting if I ever get to that, which I don't know, because that's what I'm here to talk about with you today. I have no idea how I'm going to manage this because of what's happening with the Confederacy. So anyway, so the original starter, which you can't really get anymore, comes with several feet of Civil War fence, 15 millimeter scale Civil War fencing, and 1 barn, which is a really cool 15 millimeter building, and then 1,200 troops for the Confederacy, 1,200 troops for the Union, 12 cannons for each, 12 batteries, 12 cannons and crew for each, and 12 officers for each, mounted officers for each. And then you add, I got 2 of those supplemental box for each unit, so that's 2 units of cav. The way I'm doing it, 4 units of skirmishers with dismounted horses, and 2 units of Zouaves. Those are still in the boxes. Took the wrapping off the box of 1 just to look at the models. They look great. I haven't even looked at it since. So there's a ton of models that haven't been primed, nothing has done to them, because I've got this stack of 12 sprues of Confederate troops that I've been working on for 3 months, and it has just ground my hobbying to a halt. Why Confederates, you might ask? Well, Rafe jumped in, got really excited the last time he and I talked in December, and he jumped in and got some troops with one of the new sets. So he's got fewer regiments, which nobody's ever going to need 18 regiments, I don't think. So he's got his troops. Now, we hadn't discussed which side of the American Civil War he was going to paint, but in my head I was thinking, it's far more likely that anybody is going to want to paint the Union, right, than the Confederacy. And so I want to paint both, so I have both sides eventually. So I'll paint the Confederacy first, so I'll have an easier time finding opponents. So that's why I chose the Confederacy. So out of the gate, my problem, and I knew this, I've had this problem before whenever I choose to do a painting project where I don't really have an emotional connection, is without that emotional connection and excitement, you're lacking like a fundamental element of the energy that drives you to paint, that drives you to do the hobby, right? The hobby, I mean, painting's not easy. And it is time consuming no matter what level of painting you're doing. But when you paint for whatever reason, whether it's for a project or for a friend or whatever, and you're painting models that you don't have that excitement and that emotional connection with, it's even harder. So I've set myself an uphill battle from the beginning. But in addition to that, I think there's a lot more to it for me. And I think what I've come down to when thinking about it recently, because it's been a problem. It's been a huge problem. 12 sprues. Each sprue has over 100 guys on it, and they're tiny. So the size is not my chosen size, right? The numbers are daunting, and on top of that, if you are unfamiliar with the American Civil War, in real life, the Confederacy was kind of behind the 8 ball financially from the very beginning. So even from the beginning, the uniforms, once you started to get the units being kind of pressed together, were much more mismatched. In fact, there were regions that couldn't come up with gray, so they came up with butternut yellow, which is kind of like an orangey yellow, khaki-ish kind of uniform color. You had military schools that they entered the war and fought in the war with their military school uniforms, some of which looked like more of the gray uniform and some of them did not. So there's and then once the war started, as equipment wore out, they were unable to match the pieces that were wearing out. So you have guys who have top from one uniform and the pants of another uniform, including many guys who had the pants from Union soldiers. And so choosing to paint that first was not a good idea for me either. So I have a lack of emotional commitment to the models I'm painting, and I chose the ones that were far more complicated to paint. So I lined up some contrast paints, this whole slap chop. I don't like the term slap chop. I've been painting this way for decades before contrast paint existed. So I'm just going to claim, I'm going to grandfather myself in and say I've been doing this before anybody who decided to call it slap chopping. So I'm just not going to use that term. But whatever, if you know that term, that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm talking about, right? So I just chose some contrast paints. I got 2 or 3 different shades of gray. I chose the closest I could get to the butternut color that I could find. Then I got some light blue that would have been Union pants. And then I got a couple other shades that I thought would make sense if people were just wearing their civilian pants or tops, which they used to do. And then I would go through and I would paint, every third, I would do little games in my head. So, okay, so with this color, I'm going to do every third pair of legs and one top. And then this color, I'm going to do one out of every stand is going to have this color pants or this color top. Then you've got to remember I left them all on the sprue. So you've got to remember which guy on the stand has which color pants when you flip it to do their backs. So that was a huge issue. So that added a lot of time to the painting. And so I've got the models I don't really care about, and I've got the models that are going to be much more complicated to paint, and they're at a scale that I'm not used to painting, that I don't enjoy painting. I'm learning. Especially at this numbers, and they're in absolutely daunting numbers. And so where am I painting? I'm painting, when I paint watching TV, which is usually how I paint, so that it can be part of, my social interaction with Karen. So we'll watch something that I, don't really have to focus on a lot. Something that we both enjoy, but it may be a little bit more her domain than mine. And I can paint and kind of pay attention at the same time. Now, I've also learned over the last couple of years that TV shows and movies that she thinks that I can pay attention to while I'm painting seem to be dwindling, and she needs me to be, in order for it to be sort of interactive experience, more and more not painting, which is frustrating also, because that's really the only time I've been able to paint. I have, over the course of this winter, because I blew out my knee and couldn't ski this season, I have, we get season passes, my son and I, and we managed to trade in my season pass, which is what paid for most of our trip to DC in February. But we still had his season pass, and several of his friends have season passes also. And we kind of lose money on that season pass if we don't get him to the mountain 4 times. And they have to be specific mountains. There's like 6 between New Hampshire, Vermont. And so I have been, I drive Reese and one of his friends to the ski mountain, and they go off and they ski for the day. They come in for lunch so I can hang out with them for a little bit, but then they're off again, and I'm in the lodge pretty much the whole day. So, a few of those times I've brought some of these sprues with me, and I've done some of the painting just cause. And at one point somebody did come up, the mother from a table of a bunch of kids and her husband. We're fascinated by what you're doing. What are you doing? And I told her I'm painting little, toy soldiers, and I'm taking a trip, and I wanted the people wanted to expressed as part of their trip they were interested in playing, replaying Civil War scenarios, and so that's what I'm doing. They were a little nonplussed by that explanation, but they were a little intrigued. But mainly, it was very awkward for me to be painting in a ski lodge. But I managed a little bit here and there, doing it at home while we're watching TV. It has been 4 months, I believe, 3 months. 3 months? It's been 3 months. Sorry, I'm not done yet. So eventually I got to the point where I have the Griff Charger gray contrast, which is what I decided to use as the actual quote unquote official gray for my Confederate soldiers. And I've gotten to the point where I'm painting, the remaining models that color. So pants here, tops there, everybody in one or two guys in their full uniform at a time. I've been doing that now for 2 or 3 weeks, and I still have 4 sprues to go. And when I'm done with that, then I have to do 1,200 rifles, which I'm simplifying everything. I'm not doing anybody's belt. I'm not doing any of the straps. I'm not doing any of the gear. I'm doing once I'm done with the uniforms, I'm going to do a dark brown for the rifle with a black stripe for the barrel, and the detail is all there in the models. The models are great. This is not a fault of the model. And then I'm going to do black on the boots. And that's going to be it. But so I still have 4 more sprues just to do the gray uniforms. Then I'm going to do the rifles with 2 different colors. And when I do the black stripe for the barrel, I'll also do the boots. So I've got 2 more colors after this to do. And that doesn't get me based or the command flags that I'll then have to cut out. And doesn't get me the cavalry or the skirmishers. It gets me the cannons and the infantry and some officers. And the officers are all the same exact pose, right? You don't necessarily want that. And so I do have the blisters, from a nearby, game store, the Hobby Bunker in Massachusetts. They had the blister packs of the commanders. So I've got some command units that are going to be totally unique and interesting, and those will be cool. I did again get some models from another company whose name escapes me, and they're not quite big enough. They're a little small, but when they're not side by side, they're fine. So they'll be my other command units. But none of those are done. They're not even primed. So when I'm done with this, I will have a giant portion of this army done, but there'll still be units left to paint. And that's kind of where things have ground down over the course of this last week, as I'm realizing that when I paint, and I've got other projects piling up. I have some more Marvel Crisis Protocol models that I'm really looking forward to. I have some Star Wars Legion models that I'm really looking forward to. I've got some terrain piling up, and then I had 2 Archon Studios. I have the Archon Studios City Ruins Kickstarter that dropped, that I posted some pictures of. I got that in October, I think. And just last week, I got their Fantasy Encounters Kickstarter. It wasn't really a Kickstarter. It was on GameFound. And that's where I'm gonna have trouble with the predictions that I did, because GameFound, especially the way Archon Studios is great. Their product is great. Their value is amazing, and it's not like wait a year or 2 years for fulfillment. It's literally in the fall. They were saying, okay, so we just shipped out all the last one. Now look at this new one. And it was all this amazing fantasy, mostly outdoor terrain. And so I did that in the fall, and I got it in February. So that was dangerous. So that's like, I have giant terrain, literally giant terrain. It's from the land of the giants with all kinds of cool, architectural elements that are clearly giant or ogre size models holding things up, whatnot. I've got some swamp stuff, which goes great with all of the terrain that I bought for Ghost Archipelago that I never got around to playing, but I've got some amazing terrain for that. I've got some forest terrain that's really, really cool looking. But it's all just sitting in boxes because I'm like, I refuse to abandon this Civil War stuff. So it's just like a giant roadblock on my productivity and my advancement in my hobby. And looking at, I've got 4 more sprues to go before I can then do 2 more colors on these 12 sprues. Yes, that's a big giant chunk of the army. Then I have a whole nother army. So I'm like, I'm going to do this. And I got really good deals. The reason I got the big giant old starter is because somebody on Amazon was trying to clear it before the new starter came out, which comes with fewer infantry, but also all those other sprues with the cavalry and everything. And so I basically got, the starter was a good deal to start with. So if you look at 3 sprues cost about $30, and I got 4 boxes worth of each army. So that's 120. So that's 240 plus the stairs, plus the fence, plus the building. I got all of that for $100 because it was on clearance. And then I got a good, decent 20% off on those support boxes. So I still saved a whole bunch of money, but I now have these 2 massive armies, bigger than I will ever use, which is another problem that I know I have when I start an army. And Rafe has actually commented on this many times. When I start an army, I can't look at it and say, oh, that's going to be super powerful in the game. But I say, oh, that A, it's cool looking, and B, it makes sense intellectually to me that an army would include that unit in that way. And so I come up with a whole army list that's not min-maxed by any stretch of the imagination because I have no skill with that whatsoever. But I build the army the way that thematically or narratively would make sense to me. And then I get it all. And then I bog down because I'm painting a billion things, which is usually, not true. It's usually a huge exaggeration. But right now, a billion is a lot closer than I want it to be to the truth. And so that's where I am. I'm stuck. I am stuck. It is no fun to just paint, 100 gray pants at a time. And why am I stuck? Well, in the final analysis, I'm not emotionally connected. I chose an army that's going to be more difficult to paint than the other army that I could have painted. And I believe where I get my satisfaction when I'm painting is in the final stage where it all comes together, right? So you're painting little bits and pieces. And when I paint an army, I paint all one color at a time. So I'm painting if I'm painting an army that's 30 guys, all 30 guys get their white, then all 30 guys get their black, then all 30 guys get their leather, whatever it is. And eventually, you reach a critical mass where one of those colors becomes, your finishing touches. And now it's exciting and you can see them all coming together. And when you're painting 1,200 guys, I'm not there. I'm literally not there. Most of these guys are only 2 colors away from being called done, and and a wash, because I want to do a wash for their skin and stuff. But and so my payoff, the thing that I get the most out of when I'm painting, is that moment where it's either a finishing touch or it's a wash or it's a final dry brush that really makes things pop. And when I'm painting this number of models at this scale, you're talking hours upon hours upon hours. It takes me 1 hour right now to do the easiest gray. That's a final coat, a final color on the uniforms. It takes me an hour to do 1 sprue, and I've already done 8, right? So that's 8 hours of just this one color, and I've got 4 more sprues to go, and this color ain't cutting it. It's not doing it. It's not making it pop. Maybe the rifle's going to make it pop. I don't know. Maybe it's not going to pop till the boots come. Maybe it's going to take the wash. A wash very often will do it for me, but that's like the last thing I'm going to do. And I'm terrified of what happens when I won't say if, because for some reason, the one good thing about this is that my willpower has really stayed with me as far as not going on to other things. Well, not entirely true. I may have built one cool little building out of the Archon Studios Land of the Giants. There's a really cool shrine to the giants that I built today while I was taking a break from writing. Because during this whole thing, I'm also going back to the sequel to the Alchemist book that I wrote, which is going very well. So that's exciting. But that's hours every day that I am not painting, which is good because, I get paid for one and not for the other. But it's tough. It's tough. I don't know when this is going to pop. When it's done, I still have 2 boxes of those supplement units to do. And then I have the whole Union army to do. And am I ever going to play this game? Because I'm quite honestly, I know for a fact I'm never going to play this full army that I'm painting. There's never going to be a time. If I do that, that's going to be 18 regiments of infantry, 12 cannon batteries. The way that I've purchased it and the kind of extra pieces that I have, I know that I can get 3 or 4 cavalry units, 2 skirmish units, well, 4 skirmish and or dismounted cavalry units, and the Zouaves, which I can't even imagine I'm ever going to use. So I don't even know if I'm going to paint them, because they're going to be much more complicated to paint because they're much more interesting color schemes. There's never going to be a time. So if I do that, so 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 24, 25, 26, 26, and then say the cannons will double those up. So 26, so 32 regimental units. I've never seen any on YouTube or anywhere. I've never seen any battle that had that many units, that many regiments or regimental units. So I can't imagine I'm ever going to use all this, but I'm sick in my head. This is so many different psychoses or neuroses, probably give myself the benefit of the doubt and say they're neuroses. This is so many neuroses all coming together in this perfect storm of gray slash butternut brownish yellow grossness. And I'm just stuck and I'm trapped. And I want to say the healthier choice for me might actually be just to let it go, but I don't want to. I can't. And it's not even the money. I mean, I don't spend money I can't afford to spend on my hobbies. So I save up and then I spend when I, have enough money to spend on what I want. And it's not that. And it's not that I've spent way too much because I got really good deals on this. So I have, I would say I've spent less on all of the Civil War stuff than I spent on just one of my Star Wars Legion armies, for instance, or one affiliation in Marvel Crisis Protocol. Or even more. So I'm totally going to buy into Star Wars Shatterpoint by Atomic Mass Games. And I have spent about half as much on the Civil War armies all combined than I'm going to spend on the initial launch of Star Wars Shatterpoint, which will be the starter box, which comes with 16 guys in terrain, plus the Obi-Wan Kenobi and the Count Dooku squad boxes, which each come with 4 guys, and the 2 additional terrain sets that each come with more terrain. All of that's going to cost me more than all the Civil War models I just bought combined. So it's not that necessarily, but I don't want to leave this behind me. Over the years, I've gotten very good at not just having these piles of plastic and metal that I buy and then I don't get to. I mean, that's a huge part of the Games Workshop hobby for me, was I would buy these massive units and then never get to them. So I've been much better at that, focusing on these small model count skirmish games, focusing on Rangers of Shadow Deep, and Frostgrave. So I'm painting up, big collections of monsters as I go, not buying them and then not painting them. I do have a giant pile of monsters for Ghost Archipelago and Silver Bayonet, now that I think of it, that haven't been painted, and somehow I was able to just abandon those. But I don't want to abandon this. I want to finish this, which is killing me, because what I'm saying is I want to finish this giant Confederate army, which is not an army I want. So that's where I am. I am trapped. I have no idea what direction I should dodge or duck. I have to be very proactive in planning my hobby time, and I just don't have that in me right now, but I have to, because then I want to clear the decks before Shatterpoint comes out in June. And I don't know. But so ultimately what I'm saying to you is, you should know why you do your hobbies. And so why do I love having finished armies. I love having finished units. I can get a great deal of satisfaction, whether a 15 millimeter, I did a great big not big, but I did a really nice army of the Maori battalion in World War II from New Zealand. I found, an army, and I found their narrative was very compelling, and I really enjoyed that. And so I painted that up, and I enjoyed it when I finally came, to have the full army. I love painting individual models and having them done. So for me, I guess I don't know how that translates into a huge model count, small scale army. Should I do, 3 regiments at a time instead of 12? But then are the colors going to match up? Does it matter if the colors don't match up exactly? So I think that's what's going to happen is once I finish this, I'm going to try to maybe finish 3 sprues at a time, like do the browns and the blacks 3 sprues at a time, try to finish it up. And maybe that will make it easier and the payoff, because the payoff for me is those last steps, right, that make it really nice. So that's my goal, I guess. And for you, find out what makes you. Have you been in a situation like this? I think most of us have at one time or another found our drive to get that paint time, to get that hobby time in, lagging and lacking, and finding out why that's happening is really important. So that's why I was moved to. I haven't done a lot hobby wise. That's why you haven't heard from me. I kind of, our friend Dave put together a couple nights where we all got together in game, and I was the big driving kind of force behind playing the Star Wars Legion Special Forces skirmish kind of game, that the rules that they put out in February. But that was pretty much it, other than that we played Dungeons and Dragons in Russ's brother John's campaign once a week. So we play a couple hours every Monday, and that's been fun, and it's nice to see everybody, but I'm not moving models, I'm not touching my game, I'm not setting up terrain, and so there's a lot that hasn't been done. So this is me using you as a sounding board to try to figure out why and what I can do. And I think what I've done is, I think what I have to do is focus on more quickly getting to that point where I've got some models that inspire me, that'll then just spur me on to finish the next models. And I'll let you know how that works. All right. So thank you for listening to me ramble. I was trying to get one or two people to join me, but it's tough. It's busy, and I'm busy in scheduling, but I've got some ideas. I want to get some folks who work in the gaming industry, both on the writing side and the sculpting side, and maybe a couple other people, and do kind of a hot take pip on how we all got into actually getting paid to do your hobby. So I hope you can look forward to that. I've got some writing ideas where I'm going to try to bring in some other writers, and we're going to talk about our processes. So I think that might be interesting. There's a lot of news on the Firelock Games front with their amazing new plastic Blood and Plunder starter that's available. It's a crazy. If you look at it, go ahead and find it. If you Google it, it's you get 2 ships and 2 whole forces for like $130 or $140, which is crazy, because back in the day when those ships were resin, that wouldn't have bought you 1 ship. So that looks amazing. I'm hoping I can get Mike on at one point, and we'll talk about that. So there's a lot going on, and I'm rededicating. If you follow me on Twitter, or now you can follow me at Craig Gallant, author. I have a professional Facebook page. And you'll see, I spent a lot of time over the last couple of days. I spruced up my website. So my website is thegallantscribe.com, TheGallantscribe.com. All of my books are on there with links to where you can buy them. I'm going to be doing a blog regularly again. I know I've promised this several times over the last couple of years, but I'm really going to do it. Talked about the most recent blog is how to deal with writer's block, which is, one of the many issues that I've been dealing with lately. So all of that is out there. And if you've been following any of that, you know that this has kind of been sort of a rough period, and I'm dragging myself back into all of these different grooves that I like, including talking to you guys. All right. So that's about it for me. I hope you're all doing well, and I will talk to you again soon. Ciao for now.
And good night. The D6G Hot
Achievement unlocked! You've made it to the end of another D6 Generation episode, the podcast whose humor has universally been acclaimed as not too horrible. Please let us know what you thought of the show by emailing us at info@thed6generation.com. If for some inexplicable reason you actually enjoyed this show, you can help others find out about it by leaving positive reviews on iTunes. Thanks for listening and happy gaming.